Uh, One of the things we need to understand here is that where wealth comes from, because wealth is 9/10 of what politics is about, as possession of wealth is like the possession in law. Possession is 9/10 of the law. So we need to know where this wealth is that they're talking about in terms of the budget deficit. Well, the wealth is coming from us. It's coming from us um, when we go to work every day for wages. Um, and if you don't believe me, just imagine what would happen if all the people who worked, depended on making their living from wages didn't go to work for like the months of April and May. How much wealth would be produced during the months of April and May? Right? Zero. Zero wealth would be produced in the months of April and May. Stick a pin there. Now remember that, let's say since the time of Gough Whitlam in the 70s, uh, the amount of wealth has increased by, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, real gross domestic product has grown 2 to 3% every year. So what's happening is that the workers of Australia are producing more and more wealth every year, but for some reason, the government, which had less wealth at its command in the 70s, is now saying that they have not enough wealth to fund our public health, education, and welfare, what many people call our social wage. Now, why is that? Why is it that the more wealth that we produce, the less we can afford? Well, it's because there's not enough revenue going into the government from the people who own most of the wealth. And the people who own most of the wealth are the top 10%. They own most of the wealth. You can tell this from looking at the annual report put out by this big Swiss bank, Credit Suisse. Credit Suisse. Credit Suisse annual report. Google it. You'll find out that not only is the amount of wealth in the world growing all the time by, like in Australia, about 2 to 3%, but it's also ending up mostly in the hands of the top 10% of the world's population. In fact, you look at enough of the graphs and you discover that about 80% of the wealth that the bottom 90% produce ends up in the top 10%'s pockets in the form of shares, bonds, real estate, cash, you name it. Whatever it is, those symbols of wealth, those representations of wealth, owning companies and stuff like that, it remains in that area, and that's just a systemic thing. I mean, you just have to expect that because that's the way the wage system works. Okay, but within individual countries, the wage system is somewhat tempered by the social wage, and the social wage comes from taxes. And so, what has happened to make us wealthier than we were in the 70s, but less, there's doesn't seem to be enough money in the budget to cover what we used to cover with less wealth. Well, it's the lack of revenue coming into the government. And why is there a lack of revenue? What happened? Well, in the 80s, the company tax started to being cut. In 1986, the company tax was 49%. In 1988, Hawke cut it to 39%, and then Howard cut it when he got elected to 30%, and now Tony Abbott's going to cut it down to 28.5%. That blows a massive hole in the budget. Not only are the business taxes lower, but the top 100 companies in Australia, 25% pay no tax. 34% of the multinationals pay no tax, and it's all perfectly legal. Why is this? Why is this happening? And not only that, but when Howard was in office and trying to get reelected in 2007, he had the company tax, or no, the income tax cut, and the income tax is a progressive tax. It taxes everybody differently depending on how much wealth they have, and so it just goes up in brackets. So the top 10, the people who make over $180,000 a year, every dollar that they make over $180,000 is taxed at 42%. And the people who make just less than $18,000 a year don't pay any tax. So that progressive tax, but that progressive tax was a little differently jigged then, but it was cut in 2005, and most of the benefits flowed to whom? The top 10%. They got more of the benefits than the bottom 80%. Not only that, but it blew a massive hole in the budget, but it was covered up by the fact that there was the mining boom. And so the massive hole in the budget that I'm talking about is like $169 billion from 2005 to 2012. And in 2013 alone, the budget lost $40 billion just because of that tax cut in 2005. So that's why there was a deficit. There is a deficit because there's not enough money coming in from the big end of town. And they're going to try to sell you this year the notion that one of the ways to fix this, other than cutting public services, public health, public education, public welfare like the old age pension, but what they're going to tell you is that what we need to do is raise the GST. That is the rational, the mature discussion that they want to have with you. Don't let them get away with it, because the GST is a regressive tax, and all sales taxes are regressive, and the GST is the mother of all regressive taxes. It charges everybody 10%, and they want to raise it to 12.5%. And it charges everybody, what I mean everybody, I mean Twiggy Forrest will only pay like 12.5%, but Joe that drives the garbage truck who makes $70,000 a year, not $50 million a day, he'll be paying the same. Okay? And that'll, if that is widened to the whole of the 90%, you'll be paying a massive amount of taxes. You'll be paying $6 billion into the Treasury alone, just if they just raise if they just widen it to the fresh food. So that'll put you $5,500 a year out of pocket every year. Okay? So they're going to try to say that this is the only rational thing we can do. And they're going to ignore the business tax. They're going to ignore the $4.5 billion annually that they give to the mining capitalists. They're going to ignore the big end of town, and they're going to say, it's you. You have to grow up and be mature. Okay? Oh, we have to, and if you don't, we're just going to send you price signals like through Medicare. You're going to the doctor too much. We're going to cut this, that, and everything because we can't afford it anymore. Well, we have to send a price signal to them, and that means we have to tell them, you're gone, babies. Next election, you're out of here. We're not going to fall for this, and we're not going to take it anymore.